You're broken down and tired of living life on the merry-go-round, and you can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out. Move mountains, we gon' walk it out and move.
Good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Rankin, Mon Valley, Pittsburgh section of the National Council of Negro Women. My name is Dolores Dupree, section president, and joining me is our first vice president, Alicia Gibbs. Now today, our program is going to be on Malcolm X, and we thank all of you who have participated with us in the past, and we hope that you continue to participate with us today. The number's on the screen. You can call us at 412-231-2288. Now, Malcolm X's birthday will be on the 19th, May 19th. So we're having the program today, and his birthday is not celebrated throughout the country like Martin Luther King's is, but with the African American community, we respect him in a similar manner as we did Dr. Martin Luther King. And as a matter of fact, we used to have celebrations all the time at this time during his birthday around the city. So I'm hoping on Saturday we'll have some programs that we can go to. And if you know of any, please call in and let the audience know, let the listening audience know. This program satisfies one of our national mandates, which is to disseminate information about issues affecting African American women and their families, as well as one of our national goals, which is to champion civil and human rights. So sometimes we have children watching the show. We had a couple call in. And so what we want to do first is show an animation of not Dr. King, but of Malcolm X's life. So can you please show the clip, the animation?
Hey, today we're going to have fun with learning about Black history and a man named Malcolm X. With Black history in the United States, many African Americans mention Malcolm X. Do you know who Malcolm X is? Malcolm X was an African American civil rights activist and minister. Right now, we will learn a little bit about his life. Malcolm X was born Malcolm Little on May 19, 1925 in Omaha, Nebraska. Malcolm was the fourth of 8 children born to Louise, a homemaker, and Earl Little, a preacher. His father spoke out against racism and was often picked on by a group named the Ku Klux Klan. It was so bad that the Littles had to move from Omaha, and his father was later found murdered. After the death of Malcolm's father, Malcolm's mother became very sick and could not take care of her children. This is where Malcolm and his siblings were placed in foster care. Seeing all of this, Malcolm would get into trouble later on, finding himself in a juvenile detention center, and later on finding himself in prison after getting in trouble. It was there his life would change when he discovered a religion known as Islam. After choosing the religion of Islam and joining the Nation of Islam, Malcolm Little would soon change his name to Malcolm X, where he would go on to be a well-known leader of the Nation of Islam. During this time, another African-American civil rights activist was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Although Dr. King spoke about peaceful protests, Malcolm X was known for saying, "By any means necessary, and you don't have to have a peaceful revolution," when speaking against racism. Malcolm X would later leave the Nation of Islam and become a traditional Muslim, where he changed his name to El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz. Malcolm X's life came to an end after he was assassinated on February 21st, 1965 in New York, New York. That is all for me, and I hope you enjoyed learning about Black history and Malcolm X, a civil rights activist and preacher.
And I hope you had fun learning with F-R-E-S-B-E-R-G cartoon.
All right.
Well, that clip just gave a brief biography of Malcolm X in a way that both children and adults can understand. But nothing could tell Malcolm X's story better than Malcolm X himself. This next clip that we're going to watch will cover a little bit about his name. Malcolm X had once told of his teachers at one time that he wanted to be a lawyer. Well, the teacher told him that that wasn't realistic. And that's when I understand that Malcolm X dropped out of school. This next clip will show you that he could have been a great lawyer if he had chosen to pursue that career. Can you please show that clip discussing his name?
What is your real name?
Malcolm X.
Is that your legal name?
As far as I'm concerned, it's my legal name.
Have you been to court to establish that you are?
I didn't have to go to court to be called Murphy or Jones or Smith. Excuse me for answering you this way.
That's
if
all right.
a Chinese person were to say his name was Patrick Murphy, you would look at him like he's insane, because Murphy is an Irish name, a European name, or the name that has a Caucasian or white background. And a yellow person, Chinese is a yellow man, and he has nothing to do or no connection whatsoever with the name Murphy. And if it doesn't look proper for a person who is yellow or Chinese to be walking around named Murphy or Jones or Johnson or Bunch or Powell, I think it would be just as improper for a black person or the so-called Negro in this country, as we're taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, to walk around with these names. And therefore he teaches us that during slavery, the same slave master who owned us put his last name on us to denote that we were his property. So that when you see a Negro today who's named Johnson, if you go back in his history, you'll find that he was once his grandfather, or one of his forefathers was owned by a white man who was named Johnson. If his name is Bunch, his grandfather was owned by a white man that was named Bunch.
Would you mind telling me what your father's last name was?
My father didn't know his last name. My father got his last name from his grandfather, and his grandfather got it from his grandfather, who got it from the slave master. The real names of our people were destroyed during slavery.
Was there any line, any point in the genealogy of your family when you did have to use the last name, and if so, what was it?
The last name of my forefathers was taken from them when they were brought to America and made slaves. And then the name of the slave master was given, which we refuse. We reject that name today.
You mean you won't even tell me what your father's supposed last name was or gifted last name was?
I never acknowledge it whatsoever.
Let me ask you about the status of Elijah Muhammad. First of all, is he ill?
I spoke to him today. He is in better health than he has been. He's suffering from asthmatic bronchitis.
Is that why he didn't attend your rally on last Tuesday?
The only reason that he didn't attend was his ill condition, and the weather here, especially on that particular day, was of such nature that it would have been almost insane for him to come.
Well, now, did you hold that meeting last Tuesday because it coincided with the general election, the primary election?
I think if you study the history of Mr. Muhammad's work and religious work in this country, we've had our convention on February the 26th every year for, I think, the past 33 years.
Well, now, while you don't care to discuss your former name or the name that the slave master gave to your antecedents, it is a matter of record that Muhammad's last name was Poole, Elijah Poole.
No, that's the name that his slave master gave to his grandfather or great-grandfather, but that's not his name.
Well, his mother and father thought when they called him Elijah Poole that was his name.
They didn't know any better.
Well, if they didn't know any better or not, they thought that was his name.
Yes, sir, but sir...
So what I'm trying to find out is when did he cease to be Elijah Poole and get to be Elijah Muhammad?
In 1931, I think it was, in Detroit, he was taught the true history of our people and made aware at that time that he was wearing an English name, and by not being an Englishman, he looked out of place. And his teacher gave him the name that he's wearing today, Muhammad, Elijah Muhammad.
All right, now when did he become what he purports to be in your literature, the son of Allah?
I've never heard the Honorable Elijah Muhammad referred to as the son of Allah.
The prophet of Allah. Okay.
I've never heard him referred to as the prophet of Allah.
What do you refer to him
Messenger of Allah.
All right, the messenger of Allah, and I appreciate the correction.
Yes, he says that a prophet is somebody who predicts the future, and he's not predicting the future, whereas a messenger is someone who carries a message that has been given to him by one who authors that message.
Well, now, who gave him the message, and to whom is it supposed to be delivered?
Master W.F. Muhammad, the one who taught him, is the author of the message. He gave it to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, which makes him the messenger. And he's to deliver that message of truth and righteousness to the 20 million American so-called Negroes, which means he's to teach us the truth, which will awaken us, and then show us how to live a life of righteousness, which will automatically qualify us for recognition as human beings by all other righteous human beings here on this earth.
Well, now, one other question. With reference to what Mr. Hurlbut asked you a little bit ago, you took a very moderate position of wanting independence without having any hatred for the whites. Do I understand that correctly?
Hatred is not involved in it whatsoever.
Well, I recall in a recent plane crash, I mean 2 or 3 years ago, or less than that, a charter flight on Air France in which a group of people from Atlanta, Georgia, were, as they say in the business, as they took off from Orly Field. And you were quoted at that time as expressing great gratification that this tragedy had occurred. Do you recall that?
I recall it.
What did you say? Do you remember?
The press misinterpreted it and misrepresented it.
What did you say?
They said that it was made at a Muslim meeting. It wasn't. It was made at a rally of Negroes, Baptist, Methodist, Catholic, and otherwise in Los Angeles, who were rallying to protest the brutal shooting of 7 unarmed Negroes
and what did you
by
say?
heavily armed white policemen in the city of Los Angeles. And because we are a people who have been taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to never carry weapons of any kind, but to get on God's side and rely on God to fight our battles for us, at the time that these brothers were shot down so brutally, I pointed out at the funeral of the brother who died that God would step in and take a hand in giving us some form of justice for the brutal killing of our brother. And when the plane crashed in France, I pointed out to the crowd at this rally that this was an act of God showing his wrath or complete resentment over the brutal form of injustice that had been inflicted upon our poor unarmed brothers.
Were you saying that, or do you believe that?
At that time, Dr. Billy Graham was in a crusade in Chicago, and the press, your papers here in this city, quoted Billy Graham of also saying that plane crash was an act of God. And if you take time to check the newspapers, I think that you'll find that this is correct. But no one thought that Billy Graham was so wrong when he attributed the crash of this plane to his God. But when we say that it come from our God, then we're looked upon as being, outrageous.
I know, but you took the position that this was a matter of satisfaction to you for an injustice done against you, and I think that that's a trifle severe.
We did not think that it was a coincidence that 120 of the whites on this plane came from the state of Georgia, a state that has the worst record in the history of America for the mistreatment of black people in this country.
Worse than Mississippi?
They maybe are a little less, Mississippi is a little less hypocritical today than Georgia, but both of them are still practicing the same thing. Now the whites in Georgia bite Negroes with a smile, whereas they used to bite them with a growl. But they're still being bitten, and we don't think that it is any worse to be bitten with a smile than it is to be bitten with a growl.
Mr. Calvert.
While we're on the subject of Mississippi, what is your organization's position of what happened in Mississippi in the past 6 months?
Such as what?
Such as the James Meredith incident and the enrollment of him in the university.
Well, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad wants justice for every one of the 20 million so-called Negroes, and to just take one Negro and stick him in college with the aid of 15,000 troops, and at a cost of $6,000, is a disgrace. It's a waste of taxpayers' money. It's a farce. It's hypocrisy. Because if it's right for one Negro to be forced into that university, then every Negro in the state of Mississippi who is qualified has the same right to go to that university. And if the government is not ready and willing to enforce the right of every Negro in the state of Mississippi, then, in my opinion, sir, it's only hypocrisy to pretend that they are for justice by pushing one Negro in and blowing it up all over the world to make it look like they're solving the problem when millions of black people in that state are still going to segregated schools and getting an inferior education.
Does your organization encourage members to attempt to enter schools that have been known as all white in the past?
The Honorable Elijah Muhammad doesn't discourage us from attending white schools, but he does say that it is better for us to go to our own schools, and after we have a thorough knowledge of ourselves, of our own kind, and racial dignity has been instilled within us, then we can go to anyone's school and we'll still retain our race pride, our racial dignity, and we will be able to avoid the subservient inferiority complex that most Negroes have or that is instilled within most Negroes who receive this sort of integrated education.
All right. I don't think the interviewers quite knew how to handle Malcolm X, even though they tried. I don't think they did it. And speaking of names, I actually named my own son, one of my sons, Malcolm, in his honor. So that's how much I think of Malcolm X and his teachings. Now remember, we welcome any of your calls if you have anything that you want to say about Malcolm X.
Okay. There are many who thought Malcolm X hated white people, but this next clip discusses a little about his actual views about white people.
Minister X, you have described the Muslim movement as a religious organization, and you've said that there are a great many misconceptions about your attitudes and stated views. Could we press for a very simple answer to one question? Do you hate all white people?
I don't think it's a fair question. The white man doesn't even come into my attitude. Mr. Muhammad teaches us to love our own kind and let the white man take care of himself. For a white man today, sir, after kidnapping millions of black people from Africa, stripping them of all human characteristics and relegating them to the role of chattel or cattle or animals, commodity, merchandise that could be bought and sold at will, and then 100 years since the Emancipation Proclamation, using every type of deceptive method to further us into slavery, called second-class citizenship, I think that it would take a whole lot of nerve for white people today to ask Negroes, do they hate them?
Okay.
In New York, Malcolm X famously visited a police station to denounce the violence.
I'm not satisfied with the fact that the police in this downtown area has punched one of our brothers in the mouth, and the brother wasn't breaking any law. He was only selling papers, and it would be dangerous for them to get the impression that we endorse Martin Luther King's philosophy of turn the other cheek.
In Harlem, Malcolm X gave full voice to his anger.
We are not integrationists, and we believe that you're a fool to try and mix with someone who doesn't love you. Well, that doesn't mean that we in any way condone what those crackers are doing in Birmingham, Alabama. Our people should know better, and it is no accident that as long as the dogs were biting Negro women, Negro babies, and Negro children, Kennedy said nothing. It was only after the Negroes began to strike back. It was then that Kennedy called in the army. So don't you be fooled by Kennedy. Don't you be fooled by these Uncle Tom Negro preachers. When the dog attacks you, you get that dog, two-legged dog or four-legged dog. Thank you.
Well, I think he explained exactly how he felt about white people in that last clip. Now, we talked before a little bit about how Malcolm X would have made a great lawyer, even though his teacher didn't think so. The next clip shows how he could also have made a great politician. Can you please show the clip about the injustices in the United States?
And since the American white man has used his control over the press and over the textbooks and over all forms of media to make it appear that he has done us a favor by bringing us here and enslaving us, then the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has to rewrite history or retell history. And since the white man can't dispute this truth, he tries to defend himself by saying that Mr. Muhammad is teaching hate. It's not hate to say that we were kidnapped and brought here, it's truth. It's not hate to say that we were Jim Crow, discriminated and segregated, it's truth. It's not hate to say that the Supreme Court, which is the highest court in this country, came up with a hypocritical desegregation decision 9 years ago, which they haven't enforced yet. That's not hate, that's truth.
You're quoted as having said when an airliner crashed with a number of white people on board, but you were glad it happened.
The white race in this country collectively are guilty of these crimes that our people are suffering from collectively, and therefore they would suffer some collective disaster, collective grief. And when that plane crashed in France with 130 white people on it, and we learned that 120 of them were from the state of Georgia, the state that my own grandfather was a slave in, why, to me, it couldn't have been anything but an act of God, a blessing from God, and I frankly and sincerely pray for similar blessings from him to repeat themselves as often as he can spare them.
But I take it then you support the freedom-loving attempts of the peaceful marchers in Alabama and these places.
You don't get freedom peacefully. Freedom is never safeguarded peacefully. anyone who is depriving you of freedom isn't deserving of a peaceful approach by the ones who are being deprived of their freedom. And when black people in this country come out from under the mental straitjacket that the Negro clergymen have placed them in, and begin to see that the only way you can get freedom is to get it the same way the white man in this country got it from England, or he says he got it from England. He was willing to pay the price for freedom. When you're willing to pay the price for freedom, then you get it. But the Negro in this country has never been willing to pay the price for his freedom. All of the price that we have been paying in the past has been freedom for the white man. We fought abroad so that the white man in America could be free today to sick police dogs on us, to beat our people in the heads with police clubs, and to turn water hoses on little women and children and babies simply because they want to walk down the street like decent human beings. That's now the only way you can have peace is to eliminate those injustices, and the American white man is not going to eliminate them. He's going to talk that pretty talk, but he'll still continue to practice those inhuman deeds.
You got the Honorable Elijah's message yourself behind prison walls.
When I was a Christian, I committed many crimes, and those crimes led to my own imprisonment, and also led to my being very atheistic, agnostic first and then atheistic. And it was only after hearing the religious teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that I became religious and was able to reform myself and rehabilitate myself. But I learned that after trying to reform and rehabilitate myself, that the American white man was more against me then than he was when I was a criminal, when I had criminal tendencies and was trying to carry out or practice his Christianity.
Do you blame Christianity for your crimes?
Christianity is one of the real causes of most of the condition that black people in this country are confronted with. It's the religious concept that Christianity has given Negroes in this country that makes us almost incapable of solving our own problems. The black man in this country has a different religious concept when he's a Christian than the white man has. If you notice, the black man is the only one who will turn the other cheek to his enemy, or who will love his enemy, or who will pray for those who despitefully use him just because he thinks that's what Jesus wants him to do. Now, the white man preaches the same thing, but he doesn't practice it.
Now, this refusal to integrate, surely it must lead to demands for your own state in America.
The black people in this country have been like a misfit wife married to the white man here who hasn't treated us right. And today, since we have given up all hope of him ever changing, we want a divorce. We want a complete separation, but we want a property settlement. And we think that the white man, we think that the American government should give us a property settlement, which means part of this country, which they robbed from the Indians with our help, and which they have worked up to make the kind of land that it is today.
Do you think this really practical? Don't you think that the future really lies with a peaceful transformation of the scene?
If the American government, the Supreme Court, the President of the United States, the Congress and the Senate, and all these white liberals have said that they're for integration, and these Negroes haven't gotten any more integration than they have, why, that's more impractical than separation. Practical means that's what you can practice. And if the Supreme Court and the Army and the Navy and the government and the President are supposed to be for integration and you still can't get it, why, good night. You can't get this, impossible. But we can get separation overnight because we already have it.
Mr. Malcolm, thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir. I thank you for letting the people over in Europe know what the white man in this country is doing to black people and the hypocrisy he's practicing when he accuses them over there of not getting their house in order. 20 million black people in this country have been just as thoroughly colonized by the American white man in a more shrewd, modern way than all of the colonized people in Angola, South Africa, or any other part of this world. But the white man over here hides his own dirt by constantly pointing toward Britain and France and Portugal and these other countries and accusing them of being colonial powers when he mastered colonialism before those countries ever knew what it was.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Of course, much of the injustice he talks about in that clip is still going on today. And I think he would be disappointed that so little has changed. But he can be satisfied that he did what he could to try and alleviate the situation. So now we have cell phones, and it takes all kinds of pictures, and it tells us what's happening to many of us when we get arrested. But back then, when Malcolm X was talking about it, it may not have been believed. So now the world has been shown what's been happening. We have so much going on now. We have, just recently, for instance, you know, they have sleeping while black. People are being arrested for these things. Sleeping while black, sitting in Starbucks while black, buying Mentos while black, and renting Airbnb while black. And those aren't even the worst crimes, committed on us. Those aren't the ones that have gotten us killed. Well, Malcolm X talks about those types of crimes in the next clip, but before we show the next clip, I want to take this call. But it talks about the hypocrisy of democracy, and we're going to show that clip after we take this call. Caller, please say your name and where you're calling from.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Beverly, and I'm calling from the Hill District.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, I am great. I'm just so glad to have the show on today in honor of Malcolm X's birthday, which is May 19th. Maybe this is a good way of jumping off point for other people to learn about him and study him, because everything he is saying is so relevant today.
That's true. That is true. Yeah, you would think that he was living now and seeing what was going on and talking about it, but it happened then and it's still happening now.
Exactly. And I think if he was still living, maybe some other changes would have been made. But as he said, the separation continues today. At the end, he never did say he hated white people. And they would just have seen a different Malcolm X had they read his book and listened to the speeches, because he knew some people were influenced by this very sick society, but not everyone was. But I so appreciate you all having this program on today to give everybody a chance to learn who he was and to learn from his speeches, because he was such a very intelligent man, and he was able to deliver his message so clearly. So his words, thank God, they will never be silent, because we have those clips. And I just want to thank National Council of Negro Women for bringing this to the forefront today.
And
Great job.
Thank you. Thank you so much for calling. And you have a good day and keep listening and watching. Okay, now could we please show the clip about democracy is hypocrisy?
But don't scare Negroes today with no badge or no white skin or no white sheet or no white anything else. The police the same way. They put their club upside your head and then turn around and accuse you of attacking them. Every case of police brutality against a Negro follows the same pattern. They attack you, bust you all upside your mouth, and then take you to court and charge you with assault. What kind of democracy is that? What kind of freedom is that? What kind of social or political system is it when a black man has no voice in court, has nothing on his side other than what the white man chooses to give him? My brothers and sisters, we have to put a stop to this. And it will never be stopped until we stop it ourselves. They attack the victim. And then the criminal who attacked the victim accuses the victim of attacking him. This is American justice. This is American democracy. And those of you who are familiar with it know that in America, democracy is hypocrisy. Now, if I'm wrong, put me in jail. But if you can't prove that a democracy is not hypocrisy, then don't put your hands on me.
When you look at that clip, it makes you feel that he was looking at exactly what's going on today. It also makes you long for another one of our fallen leaders who left us way too soon. Now, a lot of people today feel that the right to bear arms argument is not really an issue for African Americans, but many of us are believing more and more today that we need to buy weapons to protect ourselves. Before we look at another clip, we have another caller. Caller, can you please say your name and where you're calling from?
Hey, this is Butch. I'm calling from Homewood.
Hi, Butch.
All right. Enjoying the show.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to give a couple minutes of my thoughts for Malcolm X. He's definitely one of my heroes. The fact that he was self-taught, And he's just such an example. And what he did years and years ago is still so relevant right now. I mean, I think he might be, you think about the Black Panther, it's all goes back to Malcolm X, what he talked about self-pride, all things that we need to do now. And I heard you briefly talking about gun rights and Second Amendment. Yes, it's important that we exercise it. What's going on now, I think if we want things to change, I think every Black person should join in on it. And you have gun control in a minute. But no, it's important for us to exercise our rights.
That's true.
As far as, our right to bear arms, as you see, I just saw today of George Zimmerman. He threatened to kill somebody else. And they got off. We know what he did. The fact that he murdered Trayvon Martin.
Right.
They let him go. And he's been a terror ever since. But it's important for us to exercise our own rights. If the courts aren't doing it, the police are irresponsible in their treatment of us. Yes, it's important that we exercise that right and stand up, because the courts aren't doing it. And people say, there's just a few bad apples. Don't let it taint all the good ones. I'm waiting for the good ones to stand up. That's what I'm waiting for. Don't tell me it's about there's a few bad apples. Well, if that's the case, the good ones should turn in these bad apples that are tainting the whole police force. That's where I'm at with things right now, but I'm enjoying the show.
Thank you. Thank you for calling.
Keep doing the excellent work that you are doing.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for your call.
You're welcome.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Definitely, we thank you for calling in, Butch. Let's take a look at Malcolm X's take on the right to bear arms. Can you now show that clip?
I want to thank Brother Jesse Gray, for the invitation to come here this afternoon and participate in this rally, which I believe is for the good of the community, the good of the black community. And anything that's good for the black community, the white man should realize it is good for his community. Jesse Gray is one of the key persons in the Harlem area, primarily because he's dealing with one of the key problems, the problem of housing. It doesn't make any difference what else you have. If you don't have some place to rest your head, you're in bad shape. Here in Harlem, the reason we say that housing is such a key problem, when you live in a poor neighborhood, you're living in an area where you have to have poor schools. When you have poor schools, you have poor teachers. When you have poor teachers, you get a poor education. And when you get a poor education, you are destined to be a poor man and a poor woman the rest of your life. Poor education, you can only work on a poor-paying job. And that poor-paying job enables you to live again in a poor neighborhood. So it's a very vicious cycle. And usually these bad housing conditions result from the fact, as Mr. Gray has pointed out, of absentee landlords, people who are rich and live downtown and let you and I live up here in the shack. Actually, it's a form of 20th century slavery. And what you and I have to let the man know is we are peaceful people. We are loving people. We love everybody who loves us. But we don't love anybody who doesn't love us. We're nonviolent with people who are nonviolent with us. But we are not nonviolent with anyone who is violent with us. Once those intentions are made known, we can get to the nitty-gritty of the problem. We can get to the core of the problem. We can get to the root of the problem. And then we can correct the problem. There's been a lot of talk said recently because I was supposed to have said something about Negroes should buy rifles. White people have been buying rifles all their lives. No commotion. I see an editorial right here in a paper they call the Journal American. one that we happen to have a suit against for around $6 million for saying the wrong thing a few years ago. It says that we're supposed to be organizing some kind of Negroes to arm themselves with rifles and shotguns for self-defense. America is based upon the right of people to organize for self-defense. This is in the Constitution of the United States. You read it for yourself. Brother James had the Constitution. He brought the Constitution in with him. I don't know why. What is that now? What article is that? Second Amendment. The Second Amendment to the Constitution spells out the right of people under this particular governmental system to have arms to defend themselves. All of you know I'm not an integrationist. I'm a believer in the Honorable Elijah and follower of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I'm still a Muslim. My religion is Islam. I run into some obstacles in the Nation of Islam, and I feel that I can best serve the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's purpose and program and carry into existence what I feel, I understand, concerning his objectives better on the outside than I can on the inside. And now that I have the independence of action, it's my intention to work with everybody or against everybody, whatever the case may be, to try and get some kind of immediate solution to the problems that are confronting our people. I still believe the best thing for us to do is go back home to Africa. But while we're getting ready to go back, we've got to eat now, we've got to sleep now, we have to have some clothes now, our children have to go to school, and we need some place to work. So whatever kind of action program can be devised to get us the things that are ours by right, then I'm for that kind of action no matter what the action is. I don't think when a man is being criminally treated that some criminal has the right to tell that man what tactics to use to get the criminal off his back. When a criminal starts misusing me, I am going to use whatever necessary to get that criminal off my back. And the injustice that has been inflicted upon Negroes in this country by Uncle Sam is criminal. Don't blame a cracker in Georgia for your injustices. The government is responsible for the injustices. The government can bring these injustices to halt.
Wow. Powerful speech.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
And it's still so relevant today.
It really is.
Now,
it
that
really
speech
is.
was given 50 plus years ago, but it's relevant in 2018.
Definitely. Now, before we take this call, I do want to say that I did get a license to carry a gun long time ago, and it expired, so I probably have to go through the whole process again, but I'm thinking about getting it renewed. And I do want to go to the shooting range too, so I'll know how to handle it well. So have you ever thought about getting a gun?
I haven't, no. No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Well,
not to say that I wouldn't, but the thought has not crossed my mind.
Yeah, I'm
no.
just thinking about it, because, yeah. But once I learn how to shoot it, then I'll be okay. But caller, please say your name and where you're calling from.
Yes, this is James from the East End.
Hi, James. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm enjoying your show.
Thank you.
I just have a few comments, if you would let me make them.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Did you both know that Malcolm X and Dr. King they both died at the age of 39?
Right, yes.
Relatively young guys. And they did so much in a short time. And also, Malcolm's dad was a supporter of Marcus Garvey.
Right, yeah, I heard that, I read it.
And when Malcolm was 6, his dad was hit by a streetcar and killed.
Right,
but
they
the
tried.
African Americans believed the Klan had beaten him and put him on the railroad tracks.
Right.
And the train ran over his body.
They had already
family,
burnt down his house,
Right. Yes, and when Malcolm was in jail, he read constantly, and he even tried to memorize the dictionary. I just find that amazing. I wish so many of our people, young people especially black men, would read the way he read.
And you can tell by the way he speaks that he has a good knowledge of words and the English language.
Yes, he even tried, like I said, he tried to memorize the dictionary.
Wow, that's something.
And also, the Nation of Islam grew from a few hundred in the early 50s to 75,000 in the early 60s because of Malcolm X.
Right.
He was just a fiery speaker.
Right. He had that
people
charisma.
loved him
Yeah.
and adored him. And this is something both of you probably know already. The FBI kept him under surveillance from the 1950s until the time of his death. Some scholars believe the FBI knew about the plot to assassinate him because they had so many informants inside the Nation of Islam. They did the same thing to Dr. King.
Right. Yes. Right.
Yeah, so both men were persecuted by the so-called FBI under the leadership of Hoover. Who's just like Sessions, in my opinion.
Oh, right. I know what you mean.
Exactly.
That's true.
Yes.
And you both were talking about guns. I believe that black people everywhere should have a gun. This president we have, he does not like people who look like us. And a lot of people who follow him don't like us. And I believe he's trying to start a revolution, and the first people they're going to come looking for look just like us.
That's true.
It would be wise for us to get guns.
He's not even congratulated the hero at the Waffle House. Hasn't said anything yet, from what I understand, unless he said something today. But they have been after him, so you can tell that he doesn't, anything that we do, he tries to destroy, like he's done with President Obama's plans. He tries to destroy everything that has anything to do with someone of color.
He's a very poor leader, but some people still love him anyway. He can do anything. And when he was running for office, he said, I could kill someone in the middle of New York City and get away with it.
Right, he did.
And they would still follow him, and that's
They would still follow him.
Yeah.
So America, watch out. He's a dangerous person. And black people, get your guns ready.
Oh, all right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Some words for thought.
That's true.
Oh my.
So he was talking about the similarities. That is true. And Dr. King had a speech where he sort of predicted his assassination. And in the next clip, Malcolm X also had a speech where he appears to predict his assassination. Please play that clip.
And perhaps now should take over the leadership of the black Muslims.
No, I have no desire to take over the leadership of the black Muslims, and I have never had that desire. But I do have this desire. I have a desire to see the Afro-American in this country get the human rights that are his due. I believe that the Islam religion is the best religion for our people because it creates unity and it gives one dignity and racial confidence and all of these things that are necessary to make a complete human being.
Are you not perhaps afraid of what might happen to you as a result of making these revelations?
Oh, yes. I probably am a dead man already.
What do you mean?
When you understand the makeup of the Muslim movement and the psychology of the Muslim movement, as long as I myself, by having confidence in the leader of the Muslim movement, if someone came to me and I had no knowledge whatsoever of what had taken place, and they told me what I'm saying, I would kill them myself. The only thing that would prevent me from killing someone who made a statement like this, they would have to be able to let me know that it's true. Now, if anyone had come to me other than Mr. Muhammad's son, I never would have believed it even enough to look into it. But I had been around him so closely, I had seen indications of the reality of it, but my religious sincerity made me block it out of my mind.
So Malcolm became Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz, who made Tawbah and realized his mistakes. He took his Shahada, he performed his Hajj, he looked death in his face. He said, on my way back from Mecca, I visited 7 countries, and the CIA, and the FBI, and the international Interpol police, and others plotted to try to kill me at least 5 times. You don't have to ask yourself why they were plotting to kill this man. Because the enemies of Allah at that time is the same enemies of Allah now. And the same enemies of Allah at that time was the same enemies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before. Because Allah does not change His sunnah. The same enemies Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave to Ibrahim alayhi salam and to Musa alayhi salam. The same enemies Allah gave to Sulaiman and Dawood alayhi salam and to Ishaq alayhi salam and to Yahya alayhi salam and to Isa alayhi salam and to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam and to the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. The same enemies Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave to us. The enemies never changed their faces and they never changed their way. So Malcolm said when he became a Muslim, and they knew that he had become a Muslim, and he had made his commitment to come back to America and let the world know the truth about Islam, and to let those people whom he had led astray, to put them on the right path of Islam, to say that Elijah Muhammad is a liar, to say that the Nation of Islam is a corrupt, misguided, mushrik, criminal organization, and that the United States of America, I'm going to put them into the world court and let the world know the crime they have committed against my people.
Okay. All right, so they sort of both predicted their assassination. We do have a caller on. Caller, please say your name and where you're calling from.
Hello, ladies. This is Mark from the North Side, and
Hi,
I know
Mark.
you're getting ready to go off the air. Hello.
Hello, thank you for calling.
Listen, I was going to call earlier, but you know something? You ladies are really putting some quality shows together.
Thank you.
It is a learning tool. The information is unbelievable. Actually, the picture that you have is one of the best pictures of Malcolm that I've seen. And I just called to say it's so important for folks to kind of tune in, because somewhere within your productions there, somebody's really sharpening their pencils and doing a lot of research to be able to bring this information through. So I'm calling today. I do not have a question. I just called to say thank you for the production. Thank you for the education, and just continue to teach us. It's a wonderful, wonderful show. A lot of good information that I'm learning about Malcolm just in this hour. So thank you so much, and I'll continue to watch.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your call. So when we had our show honoring Dr. King, we showed a picture of Malcolm X and Dr. Martin Luther King together. So can you imagine what it would have been if they had stayed alive and they collaborated together? Because they both respected each other, even though people tried to pit them against each other. They did respect each other, and you can't help but believe that they would make a big change in the world today. So we know the Black Panther movie had a lot of symbolism in it.
It did.
And you know, there could have been one about Dr. King and Malcolm X. Because T'Challa, you would liken him to Dr. King. And then Killmonger, you would liken him to Malcolm X. So now we're just waiting for two, Black Panther 2.
Right.
And Malcolm X changed his philosophy a little after he went to Mecca. And we have a clip, I think we have enough time for it. We have a clip of him after he made his pilgrimage to Mecca.
Assalamu alaikum. Mr. Moderator, our distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, our friends and our enemies. Everybody is here. As many of you know, last March, when it was announced that I was no longer in the Black Muslim movement, it was pointed out that it was my intention to work among the 22 million non-Muslim Afro-Americans and to try and form some type of organization or create a situation where the young people, our young people, the students and others, could study the problems of our people for a period of time and then come up with a new analysis and give us some new ideas and some new suggestions as to how to approach a problem that too many other people had been playing around with for too long. And that we would have some kind of meeting and determine at a later date whether to form a black nationalist party or a black nationalist army. There have been many of our people across the country from all walks of life who have taken it upon themselves to try and pool their ideas and to come up with some kind of solution to the problem that confronts all of our people. And tonight we are here to try and get an understanding of what it is they've come up with. Also, recently, when I was blessed to make a trip or a pilgrimage, a religious pilgrimage to the holy city of Mecca, where I met many people from all over the world, plus spent many weeks in Africa, trying to broaden my own scope and get more of an open mind to look at the problem as it actually is. One of the things that I realized, and I realized this even before going over there, was that our African brothers have gained their independence faster than you and I here in America have. They've also gained recognition and respect as human beings much faster than you and I. Just 10 years ago on the African continent, our people were colonized. They were suffering all forms of colonization, oppression, exploitation, degradation, humiliation, discrimination, and every other kind of Asian. And in a short time, they have gained more independence, more recognition, more respect as human beings than you and I have. And I live in a country which is supposed to be the citadel of education, freedom, justice, democracy, all of those other pretty soundings. So it was our intention to try and find out what was our African brothers doing to get results so that you and I could study what they had done and perhaps gain from that study or benefit from their experiences. And my traveling over there was designed to help to find out how. One of the first things that the independent African nations did was to form an organization called the Organization of African Unity. The purpose of our organization of Afro-American Unity, which has the same aim and objective, to fight whoever gets in our way. To bring about the complete independence of people of African descent here in the Western Hemisphere, and first here in the United States, and bring about the freedom of these people by any means necessary. That's our motto. The purpose of our organization is to start right here in Harlem, which has the largest concentration of people of African descent that exists anywhere on this earth. There are more Africans here in Harlem than exist in any city on the African continent, because that's what you and I are, Africans. The Charter of the United Nations, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Constitution of the United States, and the Bill of Rights are the principles in which we believe, and that these documents, if put into practice, represent the essence of mankind's hopes and good intentions, desirous that all Afro-American people and organizations should henceforth unite so that the welfare and well-being of our people will be assured. We are resolved to reinforce the common bond of purpose between our people by submerging all of our differences and establishing non-sectarian constructive programs for human rights. We hereby present this charter. Number one, the establishment. The Organization of Afro-American Unity shall include all people of African descent in the Western Hemisphere. In essence, what it is saying, instead of you and me running around here seeking allies in our struggle for freedom, in the Irish neighborhood or the Jewish neighborhood or the Italian neighborhood, we need to seek some allies among people who look something like we do. And once we get their allies,
It's time out for you and me to stop running away from the wolf right into the arms of the fox, looking for some kind of help. That's a drag. Number two, self-defense. Since self-preservation is the first law of nature, we assert the Afro-American's right to self-defense. The Constitution of the United States of America clearly affirms the right of every American citizen to bear arms. And as Americans, we will not give up a single right guaranteed under the Constitution. The history of unpunished violence against our people clearly indicates that we must be prepared to defend ourselves, or we will continue to be a defenseless people at the mercy of a ruthless and violent racist mob.
All right. Today we honored Malcolm X, his life and his works for our country, fighting against injustices. We thank you for watching and participating in this program. Our next program will be next Tuesday. We will discuss the 2018 Juneteenth celebration. Last year, National Council of Negro Women participated in the program, in the parade, and we plan to participate in it again this year. So we hope to see you next time. Have a good evening.
You're broken down and tired of living life on the merry-go-round, and you can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out. Move mountains, we gon' walk it out and move.